Grandma liked to force her ideas on us even when they were wrong. When the apocalypse came, our family owned a small supermarket. I thought the whole family could hold out until the end together. However, Grandma threatened to kill herself to stop us from eating. She only gave us one cookie a day, claiming that since the rescue time was uncertain, we had to save supplies. Later, our whole family starved to death while surrounded by a large amount of stocked goods, Grandma eating alone. Finally waited for Uncle's family. They used our stocked goods to survive until the day of the national rescue. When I opened my eyes again, our family of 3 had returned to the first day of the heavy rain. My dad wiped the rain off his face and said, "Mom, you're so worried about my brother. I'll take you to stay with him for a couple of days." "One, you lazy girl. With such loud thunder, how could you still be sound asleep?" My ear was forcefully twisted, and the pain woke me up immediately. Meeting Grandma's fierce eyes, I was so frightened that I almost screamed, "What are you daydreaming about? Your dad will be back soon. Hurry up and get up to help me carry things. You're as lazy as your mother. Do you expect an old woman like me to do the work?" I suddenly came to my senses and looked around in disbelief. Was I reborn? Seeing that I started to get up, Grandma snorted forcefully, muttering, "Having a daughter is really useless," and then walked towards the door. The next second, a person rushed in from the door, forcefully pushed her aside, and rushed in front of me, hugging me and looking me up and down. My eyes immediately turned red, and tears couldn't stop falling. "Mom, Victoria, my Victoria, you're okay. Thank goodness, you're okay." My mom was reborn too. Realizing this, I quickly covered my overly emotional mom and looked behind her, seeing Grandma holding her waist, moaning ouch, ouch, non-stop. "Are you trying to kill me, you damned heartless thing? You almost knocked me over on purpose." I quickly winked at Mom, and she also reacted. She said indifferently, "Mom, you're here too." I didn't notice. Grandma was furious, and her finger pointing at my mom trembled non-stop. You good for nothing Eleanor. Just you wait until Dominic comes back." My mom and I felt a sudden sinking in our hearts because my dad was extremely filial last time. If it weren't for his always listening to Grandma and being afraid of her self-harm threats, our family wouldn't have ended up like that. After Grandma slammed the door and left, Mom tightly held my hand and told me, "Victoria, don't be afraid. This time, even if I have to risk my life, I'll definitely drive your dad and that old hag out." Mom hugged me and cried, my Victoria must never be starved to death again." Too, last time, it also started to rain heavily at this time. At first, everyone thought it was just a typhoon passing by and didn't take it seriously. But this heavy rain lasted unexpectedly long, and it got heavier day by day. Soon, large-scale floods broke out everywhere. Areas below the 3rd floor of buildings were all flooded, and it was impossible to go out to buy supplies. Every day, there were people starving or dying of thirst. Fortunately, our family had a small supermarket at the entrance of the community when it first started to rain. My dad was afraid of excessive moisture. After closing the store every day, he would move some stocked goods to our home on the 10th floor. After the ground started to accumulate water, my dad was even more worried that the goods would be flooded, so he simply closed the store and moved all the things from the supermarket back home. When the flood broke out and the heavy rain didn't stop, our family had sufficient supplies and water. As long as our family of 4 used them normally, we could hold out for 2 years. If we still couldn't wait for national rescue by then, basically, the world was going to be destroyed. But Grandma blocked the door of the room where the supplies were stored, holding a kitchen knife, and declared that she would distribute all the things in the house. At first, she would give each of us a loaf of bread and a bottle of water per meal, but gradually, it became less and less, changing to 1 loaf of bread and 1 bottle of water a day, and then to half a loaf of bread and 1 bottle of water for 3 people, until a month later, she only gave each of us 1 cookie a day. "Anyway, you all stay at home doing nothing every day, without any physical exertion. You don't need to eat. You young people only know how to waste. I've eaten more salt than you've eaten rice. Listening to me is always right. Dominic, how could your mother harm you? No one knows when this natural disaster will end. Don't we have to save in order for our whole family to survive longer?" Later, I was so hungry that I was on the verge of death, and my whole body was so emaciated that only skin was left covering my bones. My dad wanted to break in to get something to eat, but Grandma ruthlessly slashed a cut on her neck, and blood flowed profusely. "Dominic, do you want to watch your mother die in front of you? Have you forgotten how, after your father passed away, I saved every penny to raise you and your brother? Back then, what I relied on was saving. You also lived through tough times when you were young. You ate tree bark and roots and still survived. Can this little girl really starve to death just by eating so little every day? She's just greedy. You can't spoil her. This will ruin our family's future." My dad still wanted to rush forward, but Grandma waved the kitchen knife randomly, threatening that if my dad rushed at her again, she would run out of the house and tell everyone that our family had supplies. She viciously issued a threat. At that time, Can you really protect this family and these two women by yourself? My dad had no choice but to kneel on the ground and kowtow to her together with my mom. Mom, we don't need much. Just give Victoria a loaf of bread. There's still so much left. Can we just get through this difficult time first? But Grandma watched the two people kowtowing until their heads were bleeding, unmoved, and firmly refused. It's just a worthless girl, even if she's gone. You can have a son later. Which is even better, it'll be one less burden. Amidst Grandma's vicious words, I took my last breath, and my soul floated into the air. I saw my mom crying until she fainted, and soon after, she also lost her life. I saw my dad stabbing a fruit knife from the kitchen into his heart, and blood flowed all over the room. I also saw Uncle's family rowing a kayak to our house downstairs, quietly going upstairs, and being welcomed into the house by Grandma. Grandma hugged my cousin, shouting darling non-stop. Grandma has finally waited for you. Look, I've kept all these things safe. You can eat whatever you want. Thinking of this, I clenched my fists. This time, I must drive this old hag out first. 3. Grandma had always been partial to her younger son and didn't like my dad. She resented the fact that my dad didn't listen to her and marry her niece from her natal family, but insisted on marrying my mom, who came from a poor family in the village. This was especially true after I was born to my dad and a boy was born to Uncle's family. At first, in order to use her pension to subsidize Uncle's family and to be with my cousin all the time, she lived with Uncle's family. Later, when she got old and had a serious illness, she didn't let my aunt take care of her, but insisted that my mom stay overnight at the hospital. She claimed that since ancient times, it was the eldest son's responsibility to provide for his parents in their old age. After she recovered from her illness, she said that she was used to my mom's care and moved in with us. Her pension was transferred to Uncle's card every month, because she was a widowed mother. My dad felt sorry for her and always asked me and my mom to give in to her, but who would have thought that giving in would lead to the destruction of our family? If my dad was still like this time, I agreed with my mom, and I would definitely not want him anymore. Just then, the sound of a car braking was heard at the door. Mom took my hand and we walked out together, just in time to see my dad, his face covered in rain. He looked at us first, and then at Grandma, who rushed towards him to complain, Dominic, you're finally back. If you hadn't come back, I would have been killed by these two women. Look at my waist. Your wife is really ruthless. She deliberately slammed me into the doorframe just now. Look, it's all bruised. My mom and I stared closely at my dad. He didn't scold my mom and me in front of Grandma as he used to, and then apologize and coax us later. Instead, he remained silent, glaring at Grandma. Grandma also felt something was wrong and stopped howling to look at my dad. Mom, it's raining heavily outside. I saw everyone scrambling for supplies. I wonder how my little brother's family is doing. What? As expected, Grandma's attention was diverted. I frowned in confusion. The date on the wall showed that it was September 12th, 2027. This was only the first day of the heavy rain, and everyone didn't take it seriously. How could there be people scrambling for supplies? Then what about your brother's family? Dominic, quickly send them some things. Didn't you just go to restock? My dad nodded. Mom, of course I can't leave my brother's family alone. I plan to send all the goods I restocked this time to my brother's house. If you're worried about my brother, come with me too. Coincidentally, didn't you say you missed Dylan some time ago? School is suspended because of the heavy rain. You can stay at their house for a few days, and I'll pick you up when the rain stops. As expected, Grandma was tempted. She smiled and said to my dad, Good, you're so thoughtful. Then I'll go pack some things. Let's go quickly, for Grandma went back to her room to pack things. The three of us in the family looked at each other in dismay. I was the first to speak and asked my dad, Dad, did you come back too? My dad finally burst into tears, knelt directly on the ground, and slapped himself hard. Eleanor, Victoria, it's my fault. I'm so stupid and useless that I harmed you. I deserve to die. I really deserve to die. My mom and I also cried and rushed up to hug my dad. Don't worry, no one can harm our family this time. After saying that, my dad wiped his face, stood up, and looked determined. Grandma came out with a large suitcase. My mom and I exchanged a look and said nothing. She must have taken things from our house to subsidize Uncle's family again. But for now, as long as we could send this troublemaker away. After my dad helped her carry it to the car, the two of them were about to set off. The weather had been bad recently, so the supermarket business wasn't good. This restocking was just a small replenishment of some popular items. There weren't many things and they weren't complete. It probably wouldn't last Uncle's family long. My mom and I were worried about how to deal with them if they came to our door again. My dad quietly came over. Grandma, I rented a house across the street. The password is Victoria's birthday. You two go and take a look first. After I come back, we'll slowly move the supplies there. It turned out that before coming home, he had gone to the real estate agency and rented a large flat on the 15th floor of a high-end community across from our community. The landlord was abroad, and the agency handled everything. My mom and I took the keys and came to the new home. This building was close to the road, looking out of the window. We could just see our supermarket and the entrance of the community. At first, my dad had his eye on this new high-end community in school, spent all his savings to rent this storefront, and bought a house in the community behind to settle down. But in fact, we had only moved here for less than 2 months, and because modern people were indifferent and didn't care about their neighbors, no one knew that our family ran a supermarket last time, until the end. No one broke into our house to rob or kill. It was a windfall for Grandma and Uncle's family. 5. It was only a little after 4 o'clock, but because of the heavy rain, it was pitch black outside, lightning flashed from time to time, and there were hardly any people on the road. My dad looked particularly conspicuous when he drove the small truck back to the door of the supermarket. I watched from the window as he closed the supermarket door, pasted the "closed for business" sign. And then I pulled my mom back to the supermarket to sort out the supplies and move them to the new home. After that, we rested in the new home during the day and started moving supplies at night. It took a full week to move everything. This high-end community had 1 elevator for 1 household, and the occupancy rate wasn't high. We didn't meet a single neighbor in this week. My dad said that he deliberately rented a house here not only because it was close to the supermarket and convenient for moving things, but also because this community was sold with the greatest advantage of security. At that time, the best and hardest materials were used to prevent the rich from being robbed or burglarized at home. Even the glass of this floor-to-the-ceiling window is bulletproof. So we don't need to renovate the house. Making too much noise might attract others' attention. I nodded in agreement. Now that we've moved in secretly and don't turn on the lights at night, others won't easily notice that there are residents here. My dad added, "We're on the second to top floor." I checked, and there are no residents on the top floor yet. When the power and water supply are cut off and we can't deal with excrement, we'll go to the rooftop to deal with it. After we separately bought some self-defense items such as knives, hammers, anti-wolf devices, binoculars, and various medicines and vitamins, we stopped going out. By this time, the heavy rain had been falling continuously for more than 10 days, the city's drainage system was already overwhelmed, and the roads began to be flooded. The general public finally realized that something was wrong and started to rush out in the rain to scramble for supplies. The TV news was full of news that various supermarkets had been emptied, and on this day, my dad received a call from Grandma. 6. Originally, my dad didn't want to answer, but I thought we still had to stabilize Grandma and Uncle's family for now. Otherwise, although traveling was not very convenient at present, it was still possible to go out. If they came looking for us now and made a scene, others would know that our family had a large amount of supplies, although we moved here secretly. It's not completely unknown. I looked downstairs, for example, the security guard at the entrance of the community and that real estate agent. My dad thought for a while and agreed. It's indeed a hidden danger. The real estate agent doesn't live here, which is okay, but we have to be careful of the community security guard. They can hear if your grandma and the others make a ruckus. After saying that, he answered the phone. Immediately, Grandma's shrill voice came from the other end. "Dominic, quickly bring some more things from the supermarket. Do you want to starve me and your brother to death?" My dad remained silent, and her voice became even louder. "Are you listening to me? The things you sent last time are basically useless. Send some more vegetables, fruits, and instant food." Before she finished speaking, Aunt's lowered voice came from the side. "Mom, these are not enough. There are only 3 people in brother's family. They can't eat much. Ask brother to move most of the stocked goods in the supermarket to our place." Uncle also chimed in beside her. "Clara is right, Mom. Since we're going to send them, we might as well send enough at once. It'll save my brother the trouble when the road gets bad later." Right. I was almost amused by their audacity. My mom was so angry at their brazenness that her face turned pale. My dad raised his hand to signal us to be calm. After Grandma said, "Did you hear that, Dominic? Look how considerate your brother is of you," he told Grandma. "Okay, I'll send the things to you right away." As soon as the call ended, my mom couldn't hold back anymore. "Dominic, I thought you had come to your senses after dying once, but it seems you're still muddle-headed. Are you still going to be blindly filial? Are you happy to give all the things to your brother's family and starve us mother and daughter to death? Let me tell you, don't even think about it, unless I die. You won't be able to move a single thing there." My dad quickly explained. "Eleanor, what are you thinking? How could I still do that? Even if I die, they won't get a single thing from me. Don't worry, this time, except for you and Victoria, the life and death of others have nothing to do with me. I already repaid all the kindness of birth last time." "Then what did you mean on the phone just now? Wasn't it Victoria who said we should stabilize them first?" "Don't worry. I'll find a way to fob them off later." After saying that, my dad started cooking. Those fresh foods, vegetables, and fruits couldn't be stored for a long time. My dad simply cooked a big meal and let us eat to our heart's content. Later, we'll only be able to take some multivitamins for supplementation. For now, while we can, let's eat more to build up our bodies. After we were full, we started preparing for other aspects of living in seclusion. I took turns charging a large number of high-power power banks we bought, so that we could use them for boiling water and cooking later. There was no way we could use power-hungry appliances like freezers and air conditioners, not to mention that they would make noise and draw attention. Mom planted easy to grow vegetable seeds in more than a dozen newly bought flower pots. It was not okay to rely solely on vitamin supplements without eating any vegetables, as it could lead to chronic poisoning and mental discomfort. As long as it was feasible, we wanted to make our lives more comfortable. Dad locked the door of the stairwell with a chain and reinforced it with several iron bars. After the power was cut off, the elevator wouldn't work. Blocking this place would reduce the possibility of people breaking into this floor. 7. We were busy until evening. Just as we were having a sumptuous dinner, Grandma's endless calls came again. Dad deliberately walked to the window, opened a small crack, and the sound of the violent storm outside immediately came in before answering the phone. Dominic, have you arrived yet? Why is it taking so long? Dad moved the phone closer to the window. Mom, I thought about bringing you more things, so I was a bit late. Good. Then have you arrived? Your nephew is almost starving to death. As she spoke, the voice of my cousin Dylan yelling came from the other end of the phone. Grandma, I'm hungry. I want to eat self-heating hot pot, sausages, and durian. I curled my lips. He really knew how to choose. Those were exactly what I ate for my late-night snack. Mom, I also want to come quickly, but the water is too deep. As soon as my small truck drove out, it flooded and stalled. Now I can't start it no matter what. What? Then what should we do? Uncle also shouted over there. Brother, how could you be so careless? I think there's only a little water where we are. It should be okay to drive over. Couldn't you just drive slowly? Dad snorted coldly, but his tone was still urgent and sincere. I was in a hurry. Besides, your place and ours are in two different districts. Maybe it's not raining as hard there as here. Don't worry. I'm going to find a place to repair the car now. Since the waterlogging isn't too serious at your place, go out and buy some supplies yourselves. Hold on for 2 more days, and I promise I'll deliver the things to you. Aunt screamed. What? You want us to spend money to buy them ourselves? Brother, aren't you ashamed to say that? Why should we buy things that our family already has? Moreover, supplies are so expensive outside now. You know our family's financial situation. Besides, Mom is still living with us, which means one more mouth to feed. Dad was so angry at these words that his chest heaved. They actually had the nerve to mention Grandma. An old woman like Grandma couldn't eat much, and instead, her pension had been subsidizing their family all these years. It was Mom who stroked Dad's chest and mouthed to him not to stoop to their level. He took a deep breath and then said in a kind tone, There's no other way. If you're short of money, I'll transfer some to you. As soon as they heard that we would transfer money, they immediately agreed. Grandma also emphasized, Dominic, transfer more. Things are expensive now. Your brother and his family are under a lot of pressure. Dad said impatiently, Got it. I'll transfer 10,000 yuan. After hanging up the phone, our family sat in silence on the sofa, even though we knew how shameless they were. We were still angered by their lack of bottom line once again. I went to the warehouse to get a bottle of beer for Dad, opened it, and comforted him. It's okay, now money is just a number. Even if they have a lot of money, it's useless if they can't buy supplies. There's no need to get angry about this. Mom nodded in agreement. Dad took a big sip of beer and said, I'm just angry. Last time, they didn't come looking for us until half a year later, when the looting and killing outside had subsided a bit. This shows that they were able to buy and stockpile supplies at first, but they still kept asking us for more, and even wanted us to move all the things from the supermarket to their place. They simply didn't care about the lives of our family of 3. They were so heartless. I looked at Dad's sad expression and told him, This is even better. Since they're unkind, don't blame us for being unjust. We won't have any guilt in our hearts. 8. After having the late-night snack that my cousin wanted to eat, I had a good night's sleep. The next day, the rain started to pour even more heavily. Every day, sitting by the window, I could see the water level rising continuously. A week later, the water had flooded up to the sign of our supermarket. Fortunately, there were raised floors in the houses around here, and no residents had been flooded yet. But the situation was already very worrying. Mom could see in the original residence group that the residents on the lower floors were begging every day if there were any residents on the higher floors who could take them in, but with the situation so severe, everyone was focused on self-preservation, except for 1 or 2 overly kind-hearted people. Most of the people on the higher floors remained silent. There were also people in the group exchanging supplies and medicine, but the transaction rate was very low. Everyone was afraid of being discovered that they had stockpiled goods. Just like this, 2 more days passed, and the water level rose to the 2nd floor. The residents on the 2nd floor had to move their belongings to the stairwells on the higher floors. Through the binoculars, I could see that several buildings on the adjacent street were noisy. At night, instead of getting quieter, it got noisier. From time to time, through the sound of the rain, screams could be heard. I was woken up from my sleep and saw that Dad and Mom were already sitting by the window, looking over there with binoculars. They've started looting. Mom sighed and told me, there are several families with children. Sigh. Dad didn't say anything and handed me the binoculars. It was pitch black outside, and only when lightning flashed could I see some vague shadows, but from those ear-piercing screams, I could also guess what was happening on the other side. I had heard it last time, but hearing it again still made my heart feel cold. When the apocalypse comes, human nature is the most untested. Everyone has only one goal, which is to survive. Dad reminded us, from today on, don't open the windows during the day, only open a small crack at night for ventilation. Try not to use an open flame, just use the induction cooker to cook something. Mom also looked worried. Calculating according to the time last time, the water and power will be cut off the day after tomorrow. It will be even more chaotic outside. We have to be more careful. We mustn't attract anyone's attention. 9. Just as we were discussing what to do next, Dad's phone suddenly vibrated. It was Grandma again. Dad didn't answer and directly hung up. Grandma called again, and he hung up again. After repeating this several times, just as Dad was about to turn off the phone, Uncle sent an Instagram message. Brother, what's going on? Why aren't you answering Mom's calls? Seeing that Dad didn't reply, he immediately sent another message. We went out to buy supplies, but didn't get much. You said you'd fix the car and send them to us in 2 days. How long has it been? Why haven't you sent them yet? After seeing that we still didn't respond, Uncle finally couldn't hold back his anger and started to curse. Good for you, Dominic, you're playing tricks on us. Huh, did you never intend to send us anything? I can let it go. But Mom is almost starving to death. Don't you care? Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? Then Grandma's scolding came through Instagram. Dominic, what's wrong with you? Is that damned woman and that little girl stopping you from coming? I told you, you spoil them too much. This is your supermarket. In such a difficult time, what's wrong with sending some things to your brother's family? Can't they even bear this little bit? Back then, I said not to let you marry that woman from a poor family. Her heart is smaller than the tip of a needle. Look, as soon as something happens, her true colors are revealed. I'm telling you, if they stop you again, just slap them a couple of times. I'm your real mother who worked so hard to raise you, and that's your real brother who grew up with you. How can you be so heartless? My dad finally couldn't bear it anymore and said, I've done more than enough for you. The water outside has flooded to the second floor. You really have a nerve to ask me to send you things at this time. Are you trying to kill me sooner? Also, Duffoo, if my conscience has been eaten by a dog, then you, with your good conscience, can't you take good care of our mother? Every time something happens, you think of our family. You made my wife take care of our mother. Do you really think I'm a fool? I'm telling you, I've had enough of being a fool. Say whatever you want. Do whatever you want. It's hard enough to survive in this situation. Do you think I'll care about your scolding? Save yourselves. After saying that, Dad turned off the phone and threw it aside. After the power was cut off, there would be no network, and this thing was useless anyway. I gave Dad a thumbs up, and Mom also smiled. We unanimously decided to have a hot pot together to celebrate our new beginning. I took out a pack of Hidalgo tomato base and a pack of beef tallow base to make a double flavor hot pot. Dad took out the frozen beef, mutton, and ribs from the refrigerator to thaw. Mom washed and arranged all the remaining vegetables. I also used a blender to make some orange juice and watermelon juice. Dad insisted on drinking his beer. The whole family happily ate the late-night snack while imagining what would happen next. Last time, the rescue didn't start until almost 2 years later, now, relying on these supplies. As long as no one came to rob us, it was no problem for our family of 3 to hold out until then, just that we won't be able to eat fresh food much later. We can only eat some canned food to satisfy our cravings. Mom smiled gently and said, having these to eat is already enough. Others don't have anything to eat. We all smiled contentedly. 10. Sure enough, as we expected, after the water and power were cut off, it got even more chaotic. The first to suffer were the people living in the stairwells on the lower floors. Their supplies were the first to be looted. Every day, crying and wailing could be heard, which made people's hearts tremble. Another month passed, and supplies became even more scarce. There were already people starving to death in the stairwells. The remaining people, even if they weren't starving to death, were basically on the verge of death, struggling to survive. Gradually, some strong-bodied people appeared in the stairwells, holding iron bars or fruit knives, breaking into the homes of those who had exchanged supplies in the group. One day, when it was my turn to keep watch with the binoculars, I saw with my own eyes a group of strong men break into a family's home. The male owner was slit across the throat right in the living room. The female owner ran out of the house, but was chased out and stabbed several times before falling in a pool of blood. Surprisingly, the building where our old home was located, because it was close to the elevated road and had a lot of noise, had a low occupancy rate and had been quiet with nothing happening. After a while, there were fewer and fewer people in each building, and supplies were getting scarcer. Some people couldn't hold out anymore and could only risk swimming out with life-saving equipment to find supplies. But we only saw them go out and never saw them come back. Gradually, even those strong men became weak due to lack of food and water, and the stairwells became quiet again. We thought that life would go on quietly like this, but unexpectedly, one day, while I was watching a pre-saved TV drama on the tablet, Mom, who was holding the binoculars, suddenly let out a cry of surprise. "Your grandma and the others are here." I quickly ran to the window and looked down. Dad also ran out of the kitchen. First stuffed a self-heating rice meal for me and Mom each, and then took the binoculars to look. "It's your grandma and your uncle." I didn't have the binoculars, but looking down from here, I could see a yellow kayak floating in the muddy water. There were 2 black shadows on the kayak, presumably 2 people. I scooped a mouthful of rice into my mouth. It was fish-flavored shredded pork rice. Although it was self-heating rice, it tasted pretty good. It was originally a best-selling item in the supermarket. Mom, however, didn't have the mood to eat. She snatched the binoculars back from Dad and looked outside herself. "Why did they come so early this time?" "According to what Victoria said, last time they didn't come until 2 months after we died." "Right." I nodded while chewing. "Yes, they should come in another 3 months. I think the supplies Dad sent them this time misled them. Last time, we were also lucky at first. By the time everyone started scrambling for supplies, we couldn't drive at all." Grandma also knew the situation, so she didn't force Dad to send supplies to Uncle's family. I guess when communication was still possible, Grandma must have contacted Uncle's family and told them to come to us later. Grandma would keep the supplies for them. My dad also chimed in. "Last time, they must have gone out to rob supplies with others. This time, because I sent them some things and said I would send more later, they were reluctant to spend money. So they must have bought few supplies, and with your grandma's big appetite, the consumption was even greater." Mom leaned forward and said in surprise, "I can see that your grandma has lost a lot of weight. Your uncle is still as chubby as ever." I quickly said, "Let me see." Sure enough, the old lady, who was originally well-fed and plump when she lived with us, was now as skinny as a skeleton, and Uncle was still chubby, with a beer belly so big that he looked like he was about to give birth. My dad stared downstairs without saying a word. After a long time, he said expressionlessly, "Your aunt is such a tough person. Naturally, she wouldn't give your grandma much to eat. I think if it weren't for using your grandma as a hostage to come to us for things, she wouldn't have survived until now." Recalling Aunt's meanness, I thought my dad was absolutely right. Grandma and Uncle were still paddling the kayak hard towards the building where our old home was, but Uncle would take a break after paddling a few strokes, and basically, it was Grandma who was doing most of the work. Not only our family noticed them, although it was already evening and there was heavy rain, visibility was very low, but since everyone had nothing to do in the apocalypse, most of them were watching the situation outside by the window. Many emaciated faces, like living corpses, could be seen sticking out near the windows, staring at the 2 people downstairs. When they saw Uncle's plump body, there was an obvious stir, but Grandma and Uncle were still unaware. 11. Finally, the 2 of them paddled the kayak to the building where our old home was. Grandma carefully climbed from the 3rd-floor stairwell onto the stairs, and Uncle followed closely behind. The 2 of them rushed towards the 10th floor at a very fast pace. They knocked on the door for a long time, but there was no sound from inside. Since we had moved to the new home, no one was at the old home to open the door for them. Grandma put her ear against the door and listened for a long time. Uncle, who was already impatient, took the baseball bat he had brought up from the kayak and started smashing at the door handle. 1 strike, 2 strikes. After a few strikes, he ran out of strength again. Grandma took over and started smashing hard. Sure enough, the old lady, who had suffered hardships when she was young, was still stronger than the lazy and gluttonous Uncle. Even in her current state, after smashing more than a dozen times, the door was broken open. When they excitedly rushed into the house, I saw several figures sneak out from 2 buildings and plunge into the water. Mom also saw this and let out a small cry of surprise. I looked at Dad. He was expressionless, just sighing very softly. Grandma and Uncle were in great danger last time. They came 3 months later. By then, those who were going to starve to death had already died, and those who hadn't starved to death had stocked up on supplies and wouldn't risk robbing them. But now, the situation was very different. Those people who couldn't resist the test of human nature were still alive and hadn't completely lost their ability to act in order to survive. They had already killed many people and wouldn't mind killing 2 more. 12. I pointed the binoculars at the old house again. I saw Grandma and Uncle standing in the living room, arguing about something. They both looked very agitated. Suddenly, Uncle slapped Grandma hard across the face. Grandma let out an ear-piercing scream that cut through the pouring rain outside and hit me right in the heart. I watched as she charged straight at Uncle, only to be pushed hard to the ground by him. She was old and couldn't take a fall, now that she had fallen to the ground. She couldn't even get up. Uncle, however, was still pointing at her, shouting something. It seemed that Uncle had decided Grandma was no longer useful. He rummaged around the room on his own and found a backpack. Then he opened the kitchen door and started stuffing things into the backpack. In fact, there wasn't much left in the old house. There was only a little rice, flour, oil, and various seasonings. The vegetables and meat in the fridge had long since rotted. After searching around, Uncle managed to fill the backpack and was about to leave. As he was about to walk out of the door, Grandma, who was lying on the ground, grabbed his leg. Grandma kept kowtowing to him, saying something. Her forehead was bleeding from the kowtowing, just like Mom and Dad had done last time when they begged Grandma to give me something to eat. But Uncle, just like Grandma had been last time, not only ignored her, but also kicked her away. "It's all karma," Mom sighed. Then she looked at Dad nervously, afraid that he might feel sorry for Grandma and do something. However, Dad just stared out of the window in silence. After a long time, he wiped his face and said, "There's nothing more to see. I'm going to tend to those potted vegetables, Mom." And I looked at his back and sighed deeply. Blood is thicker than water, but if the elders aren't kind first, we can't be blamed for being unfilial. Everyone's heart is made of flesh. Only sincerity can be exchanged for sincerity. 13. Grandma was left in the old house by Uncle. He ran out with the backpack on his back, but he hadn't gone down a few floors when he was stopped by 4 people. He held the baseball bat tremblingly and shouted something at them. The 4 people were all skinny, standing in sharp contrast to Uncle's stout figure, yet none of them backed down. Each of them held a knife in their hand, and their eyes were more ferocious than those of hungry wolves. The 2 sides quickly clashed. With Uncle's poor physical condition, he couldn't even last 3 rounds. Soon, he was stabbed in the stomach, and blood gushed up from the wound like crazy. He let out a howl, threw the bat away, and knelt down straight, rubbing his hands together desperately to beg for mercy. The 4 people looked at each other, each of them as cold-hearted as the others. One of them went up and slit Uncle's throat. Blood spurted out instantly, splashing everywhere. Uncle looked at them in disbelief, covering his throat, gurgling out blood foam, and then fell down, his eyes wide open in death. But the 4 people still didn't relax their vigilance. They held their knives up, warning each other. This little bit of stuff wasn't enough for an adult man to eat for more than a few days. Naturally, there was no such thing as a peaceful sharing. Soon, the 4 of them were fighting each other again. In the end, only one person, covered in wounds, was left standing in the stairwell, surrounded by 4 blood-drained corpses. He put the backpack on his back and staggered upstairs. When he reached our house, he glanced at Grandma, who was lying motionless on the ground, and casually kicked her aside before rummaging around again. At this moment, Grandma's face happened to turn towards the window, just as Dad exclaimed, "Hey, come and see, the cucumbers and eggplants have grown." I happened to meet her tear-filled eyes. Her lips were moving, but I couldn't tell what she was saying. Maybe it was an apology, or maybe it was a curse, but no one cared anymore. I put down the binoculars, took Mom's hand, and we went to look at the potted vegetables together. Not only had the cucumbers and eggplants grown, but the okra had also sprouted, along with long beans and peppers. I exclaimed, "Finally, we don't have to just eat bean sprouts." Mom smiled and gently scratched my nose. "You're such a glutton." Dad put his arms around both of us and said, "Eat, my precious daughter can eat whatever she wants. There's plenty, just not today. Dad will open a bag of cucumber-flavored potato chips for you to satisfy your cravings." Okay. No one cared about the fate of aunt and cousin anymore, because it was bound to be bad. A weak woman with a child, and cousin, who was so hard to handle, with not much supplies. And now even the only kayak they could use to go out was gone. All that awaited them was death. As for our family, we ate, drank, slept, and would surely hold out until the end and wait for rescue.